The Blue Jackets should be a better team this season than they were last season, on paper at least. But which other Metropolitan teams got better? Which got worse? Where did the Blue Jackets land in all of this? We're going to talk about all of that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team, and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We'll talk about the Metropolitan Division today. Possibly the weirdest division in the NHL right now, just because I feel like so many teams are kind of coasting on vibes and potential, right? Like, the Atlantic Division is a really good division. The Central Division is like two good teams and a bunch of bad teams. The Pacific Division is the Oilers, again, two good teams and a bunch of middling to bad teams. The Metro, I feel like you could very easily see 5 Metro teams in the playoffs, and you could very easily see 3 Metro teams in the playoffs this upcoming season, right? Like it was last season. I believe it was Ottawa and Montreal got the wild card spots. And the Blue Jackets finished outside of the playoffs despite finishing 2 points out of the third seed, right? So again, that's the annoying thing. One more win and the Blue Jackets would have been the third seed in the playoffs. Probably would have got the tar beaten out of them by the Carolina Hurricanes, but that's not the point. The point is, one more win and they would have been in the playoffs and like in the third seed, not a wild card spot. Anyway, the point I'm making here are 2 more wins technically because of the regulation wins, etc. But the Metro Division is weird, and I think it's going to be a different division this year than it was last year. So I want to talk about which teams got better, which teams got worse, where the Blue Jackets fall in all of this, because I do think they are a team that got a little bit better. Not as better as I wanted them to, right? Or, that's terrible grammar, but they didn't improve as much as I would like them to. I think they missed on some things, or potentially didn't even try on some things. I still think there are question marks, in goal, in the top 6, in the defense. Like there are question marks for sure, right? But I do think that the team got better, and I think the young players are going to get better as well, right? And that's the big thing is, if you bet on yourself, then you don't have to spend money on other stuff. Would I have liked a Nikolai Ehlers to add to the top 6? Absolutely, I would have done. But at the end of the day, the team feels like they can bet on Marchenko getting better, Johnson getting better, Fantilli getting better, Matejchuk getting better, Sean Monahan continuing to be the leader that he was last season. Zach Werenski probably won't have the same Norris caliber season this season than he did last season, although maybe he does. I would love if he did. Like, the Fabro effect is real. But like the point I'm making here is the Blue Jackets think they're going to get better just because their players are all a year older. And that's honestly like not a bad thing to bet on, especially in a summer of an extremely weak free agent class, partially because the class was just kind of weak to begin with, and partially because the rising cap meant that, there were very few actual free agents. Like, of the notable free agents, like Gavrikov, Marner, Ehlers, I believe, were the only 3 of the top 10 notable UFAs to actually go to different teams, which is kind of wild, right? All of the rest of them got re-signed by their team. Florida managed to keep all of their guys. Vancouver managed to keep Besser. Like, the Blue Jackets kept Provorov and Fabro. It was a weak free agent class, and at the time, frustrating that they didn't do more to get better, but like, the team is clearly betting on itself. And I think that's not necessarily a bad bet to make, right? So the question I want to ask is, did they improve enough? I can't keep saying did they get better enough because it's simply not how grammar works. But did the team improve enough to overtake some other metropolitan teams, or keep pace with, and this is not going to be, we're not going to talk about the Atlantic teams, like Montreal got better. Ottawa probably stayed about where they were, potentially got a little bit better. I didn't double check the Ottawa offseason movement, but like, of the Metropolitan Division teams, like, there's really only one or two that I think got better than the Blue Jackets. It's just a case of, did the Blue Jackets get better than some of the teams that kind of stayed where they were? So let's get into it. We're going to start, the way we're going to do this is we're going to go in order of last year's standings. So we're going to start with Washington. We're going to finish with the Flyers, which I hadn't realized that the Flyers finished below the Penguins in the standings, which is very funny. Or I had realized, but I had forgotten, I guess. Anyway, the Washington Capitals were the surprise of the season, I think. Obviously, they won the Metro, they won the Eastern Conference, they finished just short of the President's Trophy. Struggled in the playoffs, obviously got beaten up a little bit by Carolina in the second round after, dispatching a Montreal Canadiens team that, like, here's the thing. I'm not in a position, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that if the Blue Jackets had that playoff spot, they would have beaten the Capitals. Probably would have been the exact same story, right? Capitals were a good team last season. They improved a lot. They improved their goal differential by like plus 80, I think. They went from like minus 30 to plus 56. It was wild. Coach won the Jack Adams. It would be fair if they had done nothing this offseason, which is kind of what they did. They, I believe, didn't sign any real notable free agents. They let three of their, middle six, bottom nine guys walk for nothing and didn't really do anything to replace them beyond like my assumption is that Ryan Leonard will be in a top 6 spot for the Capitals. Come October, probably another couple of guys will get called up from Hershey, right? They'll replace the older guys with the younger guys. I do think that the Capitals might regress this season. I don't think that they'll completely fall off a cliff, but I don't think they're going to be a 51 win, 111 point team. I simply don't think that that's how this is going to work. I think a lot of that last season was, they got carried a little bit by the Ovechkin narrative, which I'm not saying the Blue Jackets didn't get carried by narrative, but Alex Ovechkin has hit the goal record. I'm going to be really interested to see what Ovechkin they get because, honestly, the dude is almost 40 years old, might be 40 years old, might turn 40 years old this season. I could not criticize him if he was like, I'm just going to chill and, be on the power play this year. He's getting up there in age. I think he's probably, this, I think, will be his last season in the NHL. I believe this is the end of his contract, and I think he's probably going to retire at the end of it. He's got the goal record. No one is in touching distance of that goal record. And I think it's going to be a while before we see anyone again get even close to being able to break that record. And I think that probably is going to be a little bit of a decline. I think probably a lot of guys had career years that I think they probably might not be able to recreate. I think they'll regress. I think they had a real kind of perfect storm of a season, and I don't know that they'll fall again. I don't know that they'll fall out of a playoff spot, but I don't think they're going to be the top of the Metro. And I don't know. I could see them coming in around about the same standings as the Blue Jackets, but we'll talk about that when we get to the end of this and we kind of try and figure out what the standings going to look like. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to talk about the team that was probably the best team in the Metro, all things considered, and managed to get better this offseason. We're going to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day, you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. It's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress, and I know this because I did that with approximately 1 million Sharks games over the past couple of seasons. I would finish work, my partner would finish work, and we would be like, hey, we're not doing anything tonight. The Sharks are playing. Tickets are $19. Let's go. Let's get a beer. Let's get dinner. Let's have fun. And we did that via Game Time. With the money you save on tickets, you can do what we did, splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a friend to come with you if you want. Game Time makes all that possible. Tickets are fast and simple to buy. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes all of the worry out of buying. They've got seat views in the app before you buy, so you know exactly where you'll be and you don't get stuck behind a big concrete pillar or trying to like wrench your neck, trying to see around something. It's the only app that I use to buy game tickets, concert tickets, all of that good stuff. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about the Metropolitan Division today, which teams got better, which teams got worse, and we're talking about a team that got better and was already pretty darn good. So the Carolina Hurricanes they get a lot of criticism. They got a lot of stick from people because they continuously make it to the third round of the playoffs and then just like fold like a cheap suit, right? Like they won. Did they win one game this year after being swept the year before? You know, it was a very, like, I think before this season, their last 3 Eastern Conference finals, they'd been swept. They haven't won an Eastern Conference final game before this year in like 15 years or something insane like that. But I think that there's something to be said for a team that is consistently one of the 4 best teams in the NHL, right? Like, they consistently make it to the third round and fall short of the final hurdle. I don't think that says anything as much about the Hurricanes as much as it says that like it's really friggin' difficult to win in the NHL, right? It's sometimes a team, and also sometimes a team's ceiling is just the third round, right? And I think that that's kind of what the Hurricanes had built. That being said, they got a little bit younger this offseason. They let a couple of their older guys walk. I think Brent Burns is the most notable one, who I believe... Oh, no, he's with Colorado, I believe, now. Signed on a cheap deal there. I thought he'd retired, but no. They brought in Nikolai Ehlers, who was, you know, after Mitch Marner, probably the prize of the free agent class, since everyone else re-signed everywhere that they were already playing. They brought in Keandre Miller, which is a move that I would have liked the Blue Jackets to make. I understand why they didn't, but they brought him in. They've signed a bunch of their young guys to long-term extensions. You know, Seth Jarvis, who might be one of the more underrated young players in the league. Ton of fun. Weird kid, but a ton of fun to watch. Really, really talented. He's going to be a year older. He's going to be a year better. Again, bringing in someone like Ehlers to, I think, fit perfectly into the Hurricanes system. I think, like, they're my pick to win the Metropolitan. And like that doesn't feel like a particularly hot take. I just think that they were already a good team and they got better in a way that, you know, that they got better than every other team in the Metro, and they were already a pretty good team. Like, again, they fell. They were 12 points. Again, I can't do math on the fly. We know this. They were 12 points behind the Capitals by the end of the season, which I believe was good for fourth in the East, which is not terrible. Being one of the top 8 teams in the league is pretty darn good, right? Being one of the top 4 teams in the Eastern Division, Eastern Conference is good. Can the additions of guys like Ehlers and Miller elevate them? I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to win the Metro. Let's talk about the other playoff team that the Metro had this season, which was the New Jersey Devils, who, again, kind of just, thanks for showing up. They didn't really put up much of a fight against the Carolina Hurricanes. The New Jersey Devils, again, they didn't do a ton. this offseason, they re-signed Jake Allen to a truly unhinged deal that's like, what, $1.5 million for the next 5 years for a 34-year-old goalie, which is an insane deal to make, but hey, that's what he wanted. And then they brought in Connor Brown and Evgeny Dadonov. Again, 2 middle 6 guys that probably will push the top guys a little bit, and they deepen the lineup. The biggest thing for the Devils is they will, in theory, I'm going to knock on wood here so as not to inadvertently curse another team, because my powers can only be used for evil sometimes. Jack Hughes missed 20 games. He got shut down at the end of March. They need a guy like that. Like, they're betting on Hughes staying healthy, which is maybe not something they should necessarily bet on. He played 62 games this year, 62 games last year, but he played 78 the year before that and had 99 points. Like, he had 70 points in 62 games this year, 74 points last year. Like, in 368 career games, he's got 351 points. Took him a minute to get going. Like, his first 2 seasons were underwhelming, and again, injured. But since his 3rd season, he has really, really popped. He's been above a point a game player for the last 4 seasons, easily. And again, like, the New Jersey Devils are gonna, I think, live and die by if Jack Hughes can be healthy. Like, they've got good players around him. I think Jesper Bratt is another underrated player. I like Nico Hischier a lot. We'll see what Jack Hughes turns into. We'll see what Luke Hughes turns into. If he's as good as his brother, then, things are looking good for the Devils. But I think right now that's their guy. If he's healthy, they're a playoff team. If he misses a significant amount of time again, I think that the Devils might be in trouble. So again, it's similar-ish to the Blue Jackets, right? Of they didn't really add from an outside perspective, but they're betting on themselves and they're betting on their guys. And I think, again, betting on Jack Hughes to be good is a pretty solid bet. Betting on him to be healthy feels like a bigger risk. If he can stay healthy, great. Great news for the Devils. If he's hurt and misses, again, 20, 30 games, however many it is, then I think they might struggle, because he really is the engine that drives that team. So the Devils could go either way. They are decent goaltending. Their defense is like nothing to write home about, but fine. So we'll see how it goes. They were actually one of the better. They had one of the better goaltending duos. I believe that only 2 or 3 teams allowed fewer goals than them. And a quick look at the standings. Only the Lightning and the Jets, I believe, allowed fewer goals. And the Golden Knights and the Kings. So they were top 5 in goals against, which is, again, like, I don't know whether that says more about the defense or more about the goaltending, but if they can do that and also get Jack Hughes back, things look good for the Devils, right? We're going to skip over the Blue Jackets. We're going to talk about them last. We're going to talk very quickly about the Rangers, who I have no friggin' idea what the Rangers are going to be this season. They are the truest wild card in the Metro, I feel like. They lost a lot of guys. Like, they got rid of Chris Kreider. They lose Keandre Miller. They add some pieces. They bring in Vladislav Gavrikov on that long-term deal, who, again, he was I think the best available defenseman in free agency by a long shot, especially when you consider, that, again, most guys re-signed. I really wanted him in Columbus. I would have taken him over Provorov in a heartbeat. That being said, I don't know how much of the, Mike Sullivan is the head coach now. He is a very, very good head coach. He has dragged some extremely mediocre Penguins teams to the playoffs or just shy of the playoffs. And I think it's really only this year that we've seen, the Penguins are starting to slow down. And it's not from anything that Sullivan did. I understand why he left or why they didn't. I don't know if he was let go or if they didn't renew his contract off the top of my head, but it was time to move on. he goes to the Rangers, gets a younger roster at least, and I think them having a competent coach will help a lot. I think they obviously Igor Shesterkin is one of the best young goalies in the league, or young-ish. I don't know how young he is anymore. I feel like he's been around for a few years now, but when he's good, he's really, really good, right? If they can figure out how to get back to the team from a couple of seasons ago, they're in great shape. But again, it's really, for me anyway, the big question mark for the Rangers is, can the coach pull them together? Because I think a lot of the problems last season came from Laviolette, and I think the other problems came from the GM, Chris Drury. And I don't know that he's done enough to address the problems that were of his own making. So again, the Rangers started off really strong this season. I believe they were like at the top of the Metro for a long time, and then they ended up slipping all the way down, finished below the Blue Jackets in the standings. They were 6 points out of a playoff spot, like not the basement, but not where they wanted to be, especially after they had a really, really good season a couple of years ago. So the Rangers are my biggest wild card, simply because I don't know what the heck they're going to do. They could be really good. They could be really bad. Could go either way. We're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to talk about another wild card team in the New York Islanders in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We've talked about the Capitals. We've talked about the Hurricanes. We talked about the Devils. We talked about the Rangers. We're going to talk about the New York Islanders in our kind of which Metro teams got better and which got worse episode, which there's not a snappier, there is probably a snappier way to say that, but not off the top of my head. So let's talk about the Islanders. The Islanders' biggest victory this offseason, well, okay, they had two really big offseasons. One was finally showing Lou Lamoriello at the door. The team immediately got better as soon as that was done. And they had a really, really, really good draft. Picking three extremely good talents in the top 17 of the draft. Coming away with Matthew Schaefer, Victor Eklund, who I'm a big fan of, and Kashawn Aitchison, with, I believe, 1, 16, and 17. In terms of the roster, they got a little bit younger. Obviously, they got rid of, I say got rid, that sounds really harsh, but they traded Brock Nelson away. Again, got really good value for that. I think they got a first and Calabricci, who is a very promising prospect. They are probably going to move on from Kyle Palmieri at some point. I don't know off the top of my head if that's going to be like a deadline move or if that's going to be something that, you know, they wait and see. I don't know. Like, their roster doesn't blow me away. You know, it's a roster that in theory is very, very top heavy, right? Like Matthew Barzal, I like a lot. But you've got, you know, Kyle Palmieri just signed a new extension. You've got JG Pajot is still there. You've got Anders Lee, who's still there at the age of 35. Like, you're paying a lot of money to a lot of older players. Like, I don't think they have one player on the roster that is under the age of 23, and that's Emil Heineman, who they got in the Noah Dobson trade. Obviously, the Noah Dobson trade, the defense is looking a little shakier without Dobson. Again, I liked him a lot. Wish he was a Blue Jacket, but we move on. Their defense looks a lot shakier without him. Goaltending, again, Ilya Sorokin is going to be good, but I do feel like, again, similar to how the New Jersey Devils live and die by Jack Hughes, I feel like the Islanders are going to live and die by Ilya Sorokin. If he's great, then probably they're going to be a better team. If he's average, then they're probably going to struggle. Like, this isn't a team that's really built to score a lot of goals. And so I do think probably the New York Islanders, I don't think are like crashing into a rebuild. But I think it's probably on the horizon. I wouldn't be surprised to see them start selling off assets kind of as the season goes. I would expect next year's Islanders, unless the Islanders are unexpectedly good this season, I think next season's Islanders are going to be kind of the bottom feeders of the Metropolitan Division. They might surprise people. You know, they're kind of, again, with the Rangers, they're my runner-up wildcard team, let's say, in terms of might be good, might be bad, no way to know. They didn't do anything massive in terms of like bringing in new guys necessarily. They brought in Jonathan Drouin. on a short-term deal. Obviously, they re-signed Maxim Sipakov, who's a young player that I like. Getting rid of, I've already mentioned Brock Nelson, I mentioned Noah Dobson. They brought back Tony DeAngelo for some reason. And they brought in a backup goalie because I think Semyon Varlamov is probably on long-term retirement. So, again, not a team that's built to make waves. Could surprise people. I don't think so, though. And now we get to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are going to be just awful this season. They got worse on the offseason. And are still looking to sell off pieces, right? Like Brian Rust is probably going to get traded. Ricard Raquel is probably going to get traded. Like they don't really. It's going to be Sidney Crosby and children. Like it's looking rough out there. The defense, they picked up Matt Dumba for some reason. I think just to be nice to the Dallas Stars, I don't know. Like the goaltending is a big question mark. Tristan Jarry is, in the same boat as Elvis Merzlikins, except he has cup rings to like justify the contract. They brought in Artur Shilovs as the backup, which I like a lot. But like there's again, they got worse this offseason, and I think will continue to get worse through the regular season. Again, as teams reach out, like I said, Rust, I think, will be on the move. Raquel will be on the move. I could see them getting rid of Erik Karlsson if the price is right, although he's still making, like, the San Jose Sharks are still retaining a bunch of money on Erik Karlsson, and the Penguins are still paying him $10 million a year. Like, he's a very good player. He'll get, like, they will get good value for him in a trade, especially if they also retain. But that's a big chunk of money for a team that, like, well, we'll see. Like they're going to be miserably bad this year. The good news for them is that they've started to rebuild their prospect pool. They've got a lot of good young players. Like I really like Rocco Magrossi. They've managed to pick up like decent young players from elsewhere. I like that I like Benjamin Kindle that they drafted. They drafted him a little bit too high, but it is what it is. I like that I like Goran Pickering as a lot. I like Harrison Brunick as a defenseman a lot. Like they have Jackson Ivany. Like they've got a lot of good young pieces. Joel Blomqvist, I think, is one of the more underrated AHL defensemen, although he struggled in some AHL time this season. But I do think that the Penguins are going to be pretty bad this season, which does warm my cold dead heart a little bit, right? And we got to the final, or not the final, but the last non-Blue Jackets team, the Philadelphia Flyers, who got worse. I think the Flyers are really putting a lot on a lot of things, right? They don't have a goalie. Like they simply don't have a goalie. They went and picked up Dan Vladar, who was probably the best option of, again, a very weak goalie free agent class. But like they gave up a reasonable amount to get Trevor Zegras, who, if he's healthy, that's great news for them. If he clicks in Philadelphia, great news for them. They got a new coach, but they sold off a lot last season. Like this is going to be a very different roster to last season. And I don't think it's going to be as good. Again, kind of the kids will be good. I think Matvei Michkov, obviously, in his sophomore year, like could go either way. Like, are we expecting a sophomore slump from Michkov, which I think will make the season more painful. But their defense confuses me a lot. Their forwards confuse me a lot. They've got Travis Konechny, who's a great player. Sean Couturier, when he's healthy, is a great player. I have a lot of question marks about this. They brought in Christian Dvorak on a 1-year contract for $5.5 million for some reason. Like just a lot of really interesting moves from Philadelphia that, again, feels like they're gonna be one of the bottom teams in the Metro. Maybe I'm wrong, but nothing about the Flyers. Like Trevor Zegras, again, great player. If he clicks, he clicks. If he doesn't click, if it turns out that he's just as unhappy in Philadelphia as he was in Anaheim, if he gets injured again, like a lot of question marks. It's a real high risk, high reward type player, right? So we'll see what happens with that. But I do think the Flyers are probably going to be about the same as they were this season. Probably a little better, but just because I think other teams will be worse. Like, I think they'll probably finish above the Islanders and the Penguins. But I don't think they're going to be making any waves. And so we come to the Blue Jackets. And so I talked at the beginning about the moves that they made or didn't make. But now we're kind of at the point where I'm like, okay, what are the standings going to look like for the Metropolitan Division? And I think it's really easy to say that it's going to be the Carolina Hurricanes in the number one spot. I think the Devils we're going to see in the second spot. And then I think it's probably going to be a three-way race for the third place spot. I could see the Jackets, the Rangers, and the Capitals all fighting. I think of those three teams, I think the Blue Jackets got better. I think the Capitals will decline. I think the Rangers will probably kind of be around in that conversation. I think the top four teams in the Metro will be Carolina, New Jersey, Columbus, Washington. I don't know if the fourth team in the Metropolitan will be good enough to beat the fourth and fifth place teams in the Atlantic, right? Again, I didn't do any kind of real deep dive into the Atlantic, but like the Panthers basically got to keep all their guys together. Don't know what will happen with the Maple Leafs. Obviously, losing Mitch Marner is a big loss for them. Have they replaced him in the aggregate with, guys like Michelli, etc.? Maybe, but we don't know. The Lightning, I feel, will probably just kind of keep chugging along where they are, a 100-point team, doing their thing. Senators, probably about where they are. I think the Canadiens got better. I think the Red Wings got a little better. The Sabres got worse, and the Bruins are basically dead in the water. So again, like, I could see the Senators, the Canadiens, and the Red Wings, along with the Capitals and the Blue Jackets, being the teams that are fighting for those two wildcard spots. So I'm not confident enough yet to say, do the Blue Jackets make the playoffs or not? I think they're one of the top four teams in the Metro. I don't know if that makes them a playoff team because of the stupid wildcard rules, which I do think that it should be the top 8 teams in the league, or the top 8 teams in the conference make it, which in fairness, this season, that is what happened in the East anyway. But the other funny thing is, you've got the Calgary Flames, who didn't make the playoffs in the West. They had 96 points, which was more points than 2 playoff teams in the East. The New Jersey Devils and the Montreal Canadiens both had 91 points. So if the Calgary Flames were in the East, they would have been a playoff team by a comfortable margin. They were 1 behind the Senators, 2 behind the Panthers. But because they're in the West, they didn't. So, I would love them to make it a top 16, but I understand why they won't do that. But I do think it should be, get rid of the wild card and do 1v8, 2v7, 3v6, 4v5. I think that'll be more fun. I don't think that would help the Blue Jackets in their challenge to make the playoffs necessarily. I think unless you want to do, the top 4 in the Metro, the top 4 in the Atlantic make it or whatever, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Blue Jackets to make the playoffs this season. I think the teams around them got better. The Blue Jackets also got better, and I think, again, you're betting on guys like Fantilli, etc., to also get better and improve the team from within. But I think the teams that they were fighting for these playoff spots also got better, and I don't know if the Blue Jackets improved enough to make up that ground. So I don't know what'll happen. Obviously, there's still some offseason left. There are still moves to be made. I think the Blue Jackets are probably going to make at least one move before training camp, if they can. Obviously, Chinikov is, in theory, on the market. Or he is on the market, but I don't know how likely it is he'll be traded before training camp. They want to get a goalie. They want to figure some stuff out. But I don't know if they did enough to be a playoff team. I think they will be a better team than they were last season, but I still don't know if that's enough to be a playoff team, which is a really annoying position to be in when you consider that they were 2 points out of a playoff spot, and they might improve this year and still not be good enough to make it. But we hold out hope. We are, I think, 5 weeks away from the start of training camp, which is exciting, and I think by then we'll have a much better idea of where the Blue Jackets are. And before you know it, it'll be hockey season, and we'll be into October, and it's going to be great and fun, and everyone's going to have a good time. That's all I've got for today. No episode tomorrow because it's the weekend. Monday, I'll be back with a brand new episode. We're going to be doing the top 25, under 25 Blue Jackets next week. 3 episodes. We're going to be doing honorable mentions, and I'm going to split them into 25 to 20, and then 20 to 10, and then 10 to 1, or 25 to 20, and then 19 to 10, and then 9 to 1, or whatever it is. And so that's going to be all of next week. So if you haven't got your top 25, under 25 rankings in, make sure you do that. I'm going to put the link in the description below. It's also on Twitter. I'm going to retweet it. Literally right now, as I do the outro of this episode. And thanks for listening, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. And you can find me on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets, which is where the ranking is going to be. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show on Blue Sky, although I keep forgetting that it exists, at LO-Blue Sky. Back on Monday. Have a great weekend, and until next week, make sure you stay locked on.